about communism, or the damage it's done to the Cuban people, how many of you Cubans who fled had to redo your lives in the United States and many other places in the world. So we'll give it over to you, Iskra, and we'll be back with Q&As at the end of Chris's conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you to Lázaro for having me here today. I'm going to sit down because I can't be standing the whole time. As Mark mentioned, I left Cuba when I was 9 years old. My father was a political prisoner in Cuba, so when the Mariel boat lift was established, my father was able to bring his whole family to the United States because of his political activism. I was only 9 years old, and my family went through a series of repudiation meetings in school and at home. Buses would come full of people telling us that we were the bad people, that they didn't want us in our country. They would throw eggs at us, rotten eggs, foods, vegetables, all kinds of things. Due to these traumatic experiences, I also was in the Mosquito. It was a concentration camp where all of the immigrants that wanted to flee the country at the moment had to stay there until we would get on the boats. The concentration camp, we were over 100,000 people, 100,000 Cubans that wanted to flee the country. It was an inhumane way of keeping us there. We had to eat rotten food for 3 straight days. There was dogs that were left to chew on us if we didn't do what the police wanted us to do. And they had us with regular prisoners in the same camp, and also people from the crazy establishment. After getting to the U.S. and due to the dramatic experiences that I went through, I didn't speak for 2 entire years. I lost my speech. It wasn't until I had a lot of psychological and speech therapy that I was able to get my speech back. Due to this, ever since I had reason of mind, I haven't been able to stop speaking about the danger of communism and what it has done to my people, not just to me, but to thousands and thousands and millions of people across the globe that have had to leave their country because we are against the current regime in our country. In addition to, we also have to explain to the people how the propaganda that Fidel Castro has established throughout the world is unprecedented and is a complete lie. That is the propaganda that the left has done around the world is just a complete lie. And we need to tell them the truth. We need to tell our stories so that people understand what communism really does to my people, just like it has done to my own family. There are over 125 embassies around the world for Cuba. Cuba has 125 embassies around the world. And these embassies are not used for more than terrorism and propaganda. This is what the Fidel Castro's embassies does around the world. They use these embassies as propaganda to continue spreading communism throughout the world. In Europe alone, there are 34 embassies and missions. These embassies are being used again as propaganda and terrorism to continue spreading communism. So we must fight back. We must fight back against everything they stand for. Because currently, we have over 1,200 political prisoners in Cuba. Nobody speaks about this. We have, again, let me tell you the number again. We have over 1,200 political prisoners in my country. right now. And the only thing they did was go out into the streets to ask for libertad, freedom. What my country is looking for is freedom. What the people in my country want is freedom. They are unable to fight back because they have no weapons. And nobody is paying attention to them. So us, the Cubans that are outside, we are their voices. And this is why it is so important for me to speak about what they're going through. In the month of August alone, we had the largest amounts of protests and marches in our country. I am sure that none of you have seen these protests because the national networks are not visualizing it. But there are Cubans out on the streets almost every day asking for freedom. We must be their voices. We must continue to fight for them and for a free Cuba. Mark, did you have any other questions?
Iskra, thank you so much for your explanation. That was really fantastic. I would like to reflect with you a bit on what life is like in Cuba. So, could you just explain for us a little bit what memories you have of how life develops or underdevelops actually in a communist country? In a communist country where everything has been stripped from the people, everything has been taken away, not just because of the sake of it, but also under the promise that, oh, it doesn't matter, you don't need to own anything because the state will provide for everything that you need. And what actually happens is that the biggest lie is that the state actually provides for nothing, because the state is in the hands of dictators whose only goal is to live themselves like kings with all the wealth that's left after everything they have taken away from the people. So what are your memories of what your life was like up to the age of 9 before you and your family had to flee Cuba?
Well, my memories are very limited, obviously, because I was very young. However, I do remember my mother having to do lines of almost 3 days during Christmas time to get us a very small, something to play with. I remember my mother saying, well, you can't have that because we can't afford it. I remember us being at a table and asking my father, what are we eating today? He said, well, you don't need to know, you just eat. Because whatever was put on the table, that's what we had. There was nothing else. There were no other options. Now, in today's Cuba, it's even worse than when I was there in the 80s. I am in contact with opposition groups every day, and people inside Cuba, and they tell me the scars are horrendous. There is nothing in the stores, and they tell you that they ration the food to give to people, but they don't tell you that the people still have to pay for those foods. They still have to pay for it, and there isn't anything there to pay for. If you want to get anything extra, you have to go to the MLC markets and pay in U.S. dollars. But my people don't make U.S. dollars. They don't get paid in U.S. dollars, but they have to pay for everything in U.S. dollars. How is this possible? How is it possible, Mark, that Cuba is currently asking to the United States to help them because of the hurricane damages, but yet when us, the families of those people, want to go in and help, they don't let us in? Well, how is this possible, which is what was happening to Ariel Luis Urquiola and Omara? Explain to me how they're asking for help, but they don't let us help. The reason why they don't do it is because they want the governments to give their government money so they can use it against my people, not for my people. And that's the big plot, Mark. The big plot is for people to talk about ending the embargo. And all of that is going to do is give them more money for them to militarize and use that military against the people. So I am completely against ending the embargo. Ending the embargo is not going to help the people of Cuba. Ending the embargo is only going to put money in the Cuban government's pockets. They have millions and millions of dollars, and all they have done is use it against the people by buying military forces. I mean, you've seen these military trucks, that brand new trucks, and we have no ambulances to take people to the hospitals. People are dying because we have no ambulance, but yet we spend millions and millions of dollars in militarizing, the government. So I am against, completely against, and everyone should be against ending the embargo for sure.
Iska, there's two issues I actually would like to point out with you. The first one is that communism is not just about taking away from the people all the possessions or the properties. It's also about limiting or suppressing absolutely every type of freedom, democracy, rights that people should have just because of the fact of their being a human being, correct? And that's point number one. Point number two is that if one looks at all the different aspects of communism, it's really a closed circle, because one thing leads to the other. We must not forget that the main point of communism is to have a society where everything is programmed by the state. But who is or what is the state is a closed group of people who think or believe that they have the right to plan the lives of others. Therefore, for that planning to be achievable, they need everybody to be submissive. And how do they achieve that? They achieve that by taking away not only what they have, but also taking away all type of liberty that we in a free society can enjoy. Because when people are starved, when people are repressed, when people are policed, that's the best way where you can control their lives in benefit of that small group who have taken over the state. And that's very important that we bear in mind. Those of us who know, either because we've lived, like yourself, like all of you Cubans who have lived through it, or because fortunately we've been able to study it at university, at school, etc., or because family members, our ancestors, had to go through that also. We know that very well, and that's the reason why we're here, and many other days explain what it is. Don't just believe that communism is about taking away what you have. What you have is much more than your material possessions. It's also your spiritual life, your peace of mind, and your political and civil liberties.
Yes, I agree 100%. So I think, most than just a material part, because that's the first thing they're going to take away. The first thing they're going to take away is your weapons. Only the government will have the weapons. So that's the first thing, because they want you to be submissive to them. The second thing is they're going to take everything you own, your properties, your businesses, everything you own. And this is why it's so important for people to understand what communism really is. And there's a new thing, Mark, that it's not called communism anymore. It's called socialism, right? But only thing that socialism leads to is communism. Okay? And this was not said by me. Absolutely bound. And what communism does is it takes away everything, your whole soul. You are not able to think for yourself. You are not able to speak for yourself because they take away your media. They basically have the rights to everything, right? They take away everything we stand, and then they take your children. And this is the one thing we need to be careful about. Our children, okay? Communism indoctrinates little kids, okay? From the time they are in school. So we need to be very, very careful about our children's education. And if you don't live in a communist country, you need to be very aware of what your children's education is like and what they are teaching your kids in school. Because today, I'm currently in the United States, and we are fighting because they're trying to put things in our schools that are socialism. So it's the beginning of what my parents went through in the 60s. I'm seeing examples of what we went through every single day in the United States. And this is why I do what I do, because I feel a big responsibility that people need to understand what is happening. And it's not just in Cuba, it's around the world. It is a world plan, and we need to stop it.
Indeed, Iskra, yeah. Indeed, Iskra, we always say that communism is like a big disease that unfortunately, when we thought it was over after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the downfall of the Soviet Union, unfortunately, what we're experiencing is that it's made a comeback. It's like a cancer, isn't it? Okay, we also have here, we've got Belu Calderon, and I would like to pick on one issue. I wish this call would be longer, because I can't reach the mic. I want to pick on an issue that Iskra has just noted, which is the human rights record of the Cuban regime. And I know Belu knows a lot about these issues, about the political prisoners, how many are right now in prison, the reason why, and I would like her to develop a little bit more on this subject. Belu, take it away.
Thank you. Well, since July 11, 2021, there have been around 1,000 people. We are still collecting cases from the last demonstrations that have been done specifically in Cuba in the last month. All right, in the last 2 weeks, basically. Actually, there have been some protests around the last 2 days, and we are documenting everything at the moment. But so far, we have a record done by prisoner defenders. You can find their website. This is a European Spanish organization in charge of collecting all the human rights cases and collecting all political prisoners situations in Cuba. Just for you to have a wrap up of the situation. Among this, the 1,000 people that have been in prison during the last year, let's say that 40% of them are minors, okay? These people are under 18 years old, and they haven't cared about it, but not only that, after imprisoning young people underage in Cuba, they have decided to change the family code. What does it mean? They don't want young people to go in the streets protesting for freedom. So what they've done is to change the constitution in order to not allow parents to have the rights over their children. Meaning that if I need your children to get into the military because I say so, as a regime, I can do it. I don't need the parents' permissions to do so. Okay, and if I decide to imprison them because they're just being dissident, they can do it as well. All right, and this hasn't been voted because maybe the American people don't know, but in Cuba we have no right to vote, basically because we only have one single political party for the last 64 years, which is the Communist Party, which is the one that, of course, is ruling at the moment. Okay, and you can go to Prisoners Defenders. You can check Cuba Lex, which is another website that is in charge of collecting and recording all the imprisonment cases, political imprisoning cases. Another thing I would like to add is that these political prisoners are not recorded in the Cuban government as political prisoners as such, and they haven't had any just, fair trial before getting into prison. Okay, that's another particularity of the situation in Cuba. So they don't even have the right of presumption, and they have been taken to jail just because they've been protesting and and recorded in a video in the streets. As easy as that. Believe it or not, this is happening in the 21st century in Cuba at the moment.
One of the things that I wanted to ask was, the communists, they will tell you that they have, free health care, free education, and affordable housing. What they neglect to tell you is what the cost of that is, right? Number one, our hospitals are damaged to the point of collapsing, right? We've seen how our hospitals are currently collapsing throughout the country. The free schooling, minors at the age of 16 have to work in the fields to pay back for their education. The communist regime doesn't tell you that, but this is happening in today's Cuba. Minors have to work the fields to pay back the government for their education, so it's not free, right? How can you say it's free when I have to work for it? And how can the hospitals how can you say I have free health care when you don't have anything in your hospitals to treat my condition?
Another particular thing is that they can buy all medical tools, medication, everything from the United States. They can also buy food for the people from the United States, because this is not included in the embargo rules, and they don't do it. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly the numbers, but you can go to one of our most famous influencers, whose name is Carlito Madrid. He's here in Madrid with us, and he's part of our movement. And he has all the records of the amount of money invested by the Cuban government, bought from the United States in the last year. And they don't do anything to really help and feed the people. And, well, I don't know if you would like me to continue talking about the situation in Spain regarding the Cuban residents and all that.
Thank you, Pedro and Iskra. There are two issues that I would like to put a note on. The first one is, when I was here, the Cuban people, the opposition, the Cuban opposition, and you always claim that what you want first and foremost is freedom. Freedom is what you want. You don't want food to be sent, you don't want medicines, that's not the problem.